A homeless woman finds a millionaire's wallet while searching for a job on the street, and he falls madly in love. Sarah was at her limit. She hadn't eaten properly in 3 days, and hunger mixed with exhaustion like a constant weight on her shoulders. Her feet ached inside her worn-out sneakers, and her stomach growled so loudly that she had to hug herself just to muffle the sound. She wandered aimlessly, scanning every corner of the city, looking for a "help wanted" sign or someone willing to give her a chance, anything. A cleaning job, a delivery, a fresh start. She just needed an opportunity. As she bent down to fix her shoelace, she spotted something unusual on the ground, a dark leather wallet, sleek and expensive looking, lying right next to a streetlight. She picked it up carefully. When she opened it, Sarah's heart raced. It was stuffed with cash, bills neatly folded, so many that she didn't even try to count. Just one of them would be enough to buy herself a decent meal. With all that money, she could get off the streets, rent a small room, buy new clothes, start over. Her chest tightened. That wallet could change her life. But along with the cash, there were also documents and a business card. The name on the card made her eyes widen, Henry Mitchell. She knew that name. He was one of the most influential businessmen in the country, the owner of a billion-dollar company. And right there, in her hands, were his personal details, including his home address. Sarah took a deep breath, fighting with her own thoughts. The need was overwhelming, but inside her, something spoke even louder, her grandmother's voice, repeating the words she had heard all her life: do what's right, even when no one is watching. Honesty is worth more than anything money can buy. She closed the wallet firmly. It wasn't hers. As painful as it was, she knew exactly what she needed to do. So, she started walking toward the address. After hours of walking, she finally arrived. The mansion was like another world, tall, imposing, surrounded by sleek walls and a massive metal gate. Just looking at it made Sarah's throat dry. She had no idea where to start. She approached slowly and pressed the intercom button. Nothing. She clapped her hands. Seconds later, a man appeared. He wore a dress shirt, black pants, and had a stern expression. He stopped behind the gate, looking her up and down with obvious disdain. "What do you want?" he asked impatiently. "I need to speak with Mr. Henry Mitchell." "It's important." The man scoffed, crossing his arms. "Mr. Mitchell isn't seeing anyone, especially people like you." Sarah stood her ground, even as her face burned with shame. "Please, it's very important. I won't take much of his time." He let out a dry laugh. "Listen, we don't give out handouts here, all right? Go try somewhere else. This neighborhood isn't for you." She clutched the wallet against her chest, feeling her heart pound. "I'm not here to ask for anything. I just need to talk to him. It's serious. If he finds out I was here and you didn't let me speak with him, you'll regret it." The man rolled his eyes. "Oh yeah? And why is that? What do you want with Mr. Mitchell?" "That's between me and him." The security guard frowned suspiciously. "You think you can fool someone here with this little act?" Sarah took a deep breath. She was about to explode. This man had no idea what she was carrying, how her world was falling apart, and yet she had still chosen to do the right thing. "Please," she insisted, her voice steady, "just ask him to come here. If he says he doesn't want to see me, I'll leave. I promise." The guard still looked skeptical, but something in the way she spoke made him hesitate. After a few more seconds of staring at her, he grumbled, "Wait here." Sarah let out a shaky breath as he disappeared behind the mansion walls. She stood there alone, staring at the grand entrance that looked more like a palace. The gate remained shut, the wallet still firm in her hands. Her eyes welled up, but she blinked hard. She wouldn't cry. Not here. Not now. Inside, Henry Mitchell was in his office, reviewing reports when 3 sharp knocks sounded on his door. "What is it?" he asked without looking up from his screen. "Sir, there's a woman at the gate. She says she needs to talk to you, but she's strange. Looks like she lives on the street." Henry frowned. "And what does she want?" "She didn't say. Just kept insisting. Wouldn't leave." Henry sighed lightly, resting his elbows on the desk. "Name?" "She didn't say. Just asked to speak with you. Said it was important." The businessman thought for a moment. Normally, he would have refused without hesitation, but there was something about the guard's tone, a different kind of insistence. A small spark of curiosity nudged him from within. "All right," he replied. "I'm coming." Sarah was still standing motionless when the gate finally started to open. She saw the man walking toward her, tall, imposing, wearing an elegant suit with a serious expression. It was him. Henry Mitchell stopped in front of the gate, his brow slightly furrowed, observing the woman with tired eyes, worn-out clothes, and steady eyes. He had expected someone making a scene, maybe demanding something, but what he saw was different. Without another word, Sarah held out the wallet to him. "I found this on 13th Street this morning," her voice was low but firm. Henry took the wallet and quickly opened it. His eyes scanned each compartment. Everything was there, the money, the cards, the important documents, even notes with confidential contacts. He let out a slow breath, feeling a strange sense of relief. "You didn't take anything?" he asked, still surprised. "It wasn't mine," Sarah replied. Henry looked up, studying her. She was unkempt, her hair carelessly tied back, her face pale from the cold, but there was something in her eyes. Something strong. Honest. "What's your name?" "Sarah." "And why did you come all the way here?" She swallowed hard. She wasn't used to conversations like this, especially with someone like him. "Because it was the right thing to do. I wouldn't be able to sleep knowing I kept something that wasn't mine." Henry nodded slowly. He was used to people who hid their real intentions, who approached him for personal gain. But this woman, with nothing in her hands and everything to lose, had done the right thing without expecting anything in return. Henry was silent for a moment, then he looked at the guard. "Open the gate." "Sir." The man seemed surprised. "She's coming in." Sarah's eyes widened. "There's no need. And now you're going to have some coffee. Or tea. Or whatever you prefer. You did me a huge favor. Come in." Sarah hesitated but stepped forward. She felt out of place, like a misplaced piece in a puzzle. "Make yourself comfortable," he said. "Have a seat. I'll be right back." A few minutes later, Henry returned with a cup of tea and a plate with 2 cheese rolls. "I hope you like them," he said, handing her the plate. She took it and murmured a barely audible, "Thank you." It was the first warm drink she had in days. "Do you live nearby?" Henry asked, sitting in the armchair next to her. Sarah stared at the cup for a moment before answering. "Actually, I don't live anywhere. I've been on the streets for a few months now." Henry raised his eyebrows, surprised. "But you?" "I lost my job. My grandmother passed away. It was just the 2 of us. After she was gone, everything started falling apart, the rent, the bills. And before I knew it, I was alone. And then no one would hire me anymore." She shrugged, as if trying to lighten her own story, but her eyes revealed the exhaustion, the weight of sleepless nights, of constant hunger. "Even so, you returned my wallet," he said, breaking the silence. "Even though you could have taken it." Sarah just nodded. There was nothing more to say. Henry studied her more closely. There was something about her, a quiet strength, a kind of honesty he rarely saw in people anymore. "I can help you," he said suddenly. Sarah's eyes widened in surprise. "I don't want charity." "It's not charity. It's gratitude." "What do you need?" She hesitated. I just need a job. Any job. A fresh start. Henry was silent for a few seconds, still processing everything. I'll think of something, he finally said. Just give me a moment. Before he could continue, his phone vibrated in his pocket. When he pulled it out and looked at the screen, his expression changed. I have to take this. Please, wait here. Just a few minutes. Sarah nodded, feeling a bit uneasy. Henry walked away through the house, pressing the phone to his ear. She remained in the spacious living room, sitting at the edge of the couch as if she didn't want to leave a trace. Everything there was too beautiful, too clean, too expensive, a place she clearly didn't belong to. As she sat in silence, she heard soft footsteps. Slowly, she turned toward the hallway. A small boy, about 6 years old, appeared in the doorway. He was wearing blue pajamas with stars and held a toy car in his hands. He stopped when he saw her and stared in silence. Sarah gave him a gentle smile. Hi. The boy took a hesitant step, then another. He moved closer, still quiet but curious. What's your name? He asked, his voice small but clear. The question caught Sarah off guard. She hadn't expected any interaction, let alone a conversation. Sarah. And yours? Ethan. She smiled wider. That's a nice name. I like your car. Is it fast? Ethan nodded shyly and sat on the rug, pulling the toy car across the polished floor. Sarah lowered herself slowly, sitting beside him as if trying not to startle a little bird. You know what's even better than a car? She asked in a playful whisper. The boy looked up, curious. A ramp. She grabbed a cushion from the couch and placed it at a slight angle on the floor. How about we test a racetrack? Ethan placed the car at the top of the improvised ramp and gave it a push. The toy slid down until it bumped into one of the table legs. He looked at Sarah and laughed, a soft, genuine laugh, with a spark in his eyes that had seemed gone for a long time. Sarah joined in, trying to hold back the emotion rising in her chest. That car is a rocket, she said excitedly. Across the hallway, standing still, Henry watched everything. His phone was off, still in his hand, but he stood frozen as if he had just seen a ghost. His son, laughing. His heart tightened. It had been 3 years since Ethan smiled like that. Ever since Olivia, his wife, passed away, the boy had completely shut down. No nanny had been able to get close to him. Psychologists, teachers, therapists, all had failed. Ethan barely spoke, never interacted, and wouldn't even respond when someone talked to him. But now, in front of this woman he had just met, he was laughing. Unbelievable, Henry whispered to himself. The scene before him left him motionless. Sarah was laughing with Ethan, building another ramp with more cushions while the boy stacked objects to create obstacles. Ethan lifted the car, pointing at the cushion. Do you think it will jump? Only one way to find out, pilot, Sarah encouraged. The boy pushed the car with force. It flew into the air, flipped, and landed on its side with a soft thud. Ethan's eyes widened, and he let out another spontaneous giggle. Henry felt his eyes sting. He walked back to the living room, trying to compose himself. Sarah noticed his presence and immediately stood up. I'm sorry. He came to talk to me, Anne. Henry raised a hand. Don't apologize. That was the most amazing thing I've seen in a long time. Ethan looked at his father and, to his surprise, spoke without being prompted. Dad, the car jumped. Sarah made a ramp. Henry needed a second to take it in. Did it really? He asked, his voice slightly choked. Ethan nodded with a proud smile. Sarah, unsure, glanced at Henry. The emotion in his eyes was clear. Is he okay? He's better than he's been in 3 years. Henry looked away, took a deep breath, then turned back to Sarah with intensity. I was going to think of something I could do for you. Now, I think I found it. Sarah frowned, confused. What do you mean? My son hasn't been the same since he lost his mother. He shut the world out. No professional, no matter how qualified, could break through his walls. But you. He paused, as if thinking out loud. You just got here, and he spoke. Laughed. Played. Sarah looked at Ethan, who was now lying on the rug, spinning the car in the air. He just needed someone who wouldn't push him. Someone who would just be there. Henry stepped closer. I have an offer. But understand this isn't charity. It's trust. Sarah met his gaze. I'm listening. I want you to work here as my son's caregiver. You'll have a place to stay, food, a steady salary, and everything you need to rebuild your life. But more than anything, I want you to be there for him. To be the presence he hasn't had in so long. Sarah blinked a few times, trying to process it. Her heart pounded. She didn't know what to say. She never imagined that doing the right thing, returning a lost wallet, could lead to something so life-changing. Do you really trust me? She asked, barely above a whisper. I don't trust easily. But my son just showed me that I can trust you. She looked at Ethan again. The boy was now drawing a car on a scrap of paper, fully focused. Sarah took a deep breath. This was a chance. A fresh start. A home. I accept, she said firmly. Henry held out his hand. Sarah shook it. Welcome. That night, Sarah lay awake in bed, staring at the ceiling, her heart racing. The feeling was surreal. She could still smell the clean soap on the sheets, still hear Henry's voice in her head saying, welcome. She had never been welcomed anywhere before, not since she had lost her grandmother. After the old lady was gone, the world simply turned its back on her. She had tried everything, selling sweets, handing out resumes, asking for an opportunity, but nothing had worked. And now, she was here. Here, in a room inside a mansion, with a real closet, a bathroom just for her, and borrowed pajamas that still smelled of fabric softener. But it wasn't the luxury that impressed her. It was the chance to start over. The next morning, Sarah walked down the stairs slowly, her bare feet feeling the soft touch of the expensive carpet. When she reached the kitchen, she found Mrs. Martha, the housekeeper, serving breakfast with quiet elegance. Good morning, dear. Did you sleep well? Sarah nodded with a shy smile. Better than I have in weeks, actually. The housekeeper smiled gently and placed a cup of tea on the table. Mr. Mitchell usually has coffee at 7 o'clock. Little Ethan at 8, he's a bit lazier. You can sit down, have something to eat. No one goes hungry here. Sarah hesitated for a second. The hunger won. She sat down slowly and accepted a piece of warm bread. Her hands trembled slightly. She still felt out of place in this world, so different from her own. After finishing her meal, Mrs. Martha led her to the backyard, where there was a small porch with cushions and a wide view of the lawn. The boy likes to play here, she explained. He doesn't talk much, but he has his moments. A few minutes later, Ethan appeared, walking with his toy car in hand, still in his pajamas. When he saw Sarah, he gave her a small smile. Hi, he said and sat on the floor right next to her, as if it was the most natural thing in the world. Sarah sat down too, not saying much, just watching the boy play. She didn't need big speeches, just being there was enough. The car is broken, Ethan suddenly said. Huh. Let me see. He handed her the toy, and Sarah examined it carefully. The front wheel was loose. Nothing a little tape can't fix. Do you have magic tape around here? The boy smiled, amused. Magic tape? Yes, the tape that fixes everything, even flying toys. Ethan let out a small laugh and ran off to get something from a drawer in the living room. When he returned, he was holding a regular piece of tape. Will this work? It will. This is emergency magic tape. As they fixed the toy together, Henry watched from the second-floor office balcony. He held a cup of coffee in his hands, but his eyes were locked on the scene below, Sarah sitting on the floor, her hair tied with an old elastic, wearing simple borrowed clothes, smiling gently at his son, who was now laughing out loud. It was almost impossible to believe. He tried to remember the last time he had heard such a spontaneous laugh from Ethan. It had been on his 4th birthday, just before the accident. After losing his mother, the boy had gone silent. His world had shut down. Henry had tried everything: new toys, therapists, special schools, trained professionals. Nothing had worked. But now, a stranger, a homeless woman, had done what no one else could. That afternoon, Henry called her in for a conversation. "Sarah, could you come here for a moment?" She entered the room with her head slightly lowered, a little unsure. "Yes, sir. You can call me Henry," he said without taking his eyes off his laptop. "How was your morning?" "Good. Ethan, he's an amazing boy." Henry looked up. "You really think so?" Sarah nodded. "He's quiet but observant. Smart. And lonely. Sometimes, all a child needs is someone who listens, without rushing, without judgment." Henry leaned back in his chair. "You understand children?" "No. But I used to be one. One who was alone for a long time, too." Henry was silent for a few seconds. "You asked me for a job, and I gave you one. But what you did for Ethan, that was more than just work. That was the act of someone who understands." Sarah lowered her eyes. "I don't do this expecting anything in return. I just understand how he feels. It's like, I know where it hurts." Henry crossed his arms and looked at her for a moment. "That's exactly what he needs. And so do I." The following days were a mix of discovery, adaptation, and small miracles. Sarah began to set up a gentle routine with Ethan: outdoor play in the morning, storytelling after lunch, short walks in the garden, and in the evening, drawing and soft music. Little by little, Ethan started coming out of the bubble of silence he had been trapped in for years. He began talking more, laughing often, even humming children's songs when he thought no one was listening. Henry watched everything from a distance, noticing every change with a tight feeling in his chest. His own routine started changing, too. He began coming home earlier, putting his phone away, and spending more time with his son. And every time he saw Sarah, he felt something he couldn't explain. It was more than gratitude. It was a peace he hadn't felt since Olivia's passing. One night, after putting Ethan to bed, Sarah went down to the kitchen. She was hungry but hesitated when she saw Henry sitting at the table, holding a cup in his hands. "Sorry, I didn't mean to bother you." "You're not bothering me. Would you like to sit?" She nodded and pulled out a chair. "Would you like some tea?" "If you have some." He got up, poured her a cup, and placed it in front of her. "Are you adjusting?" "More than I expected." "It still doesn't feel real." "It's been very real for Ethan." Sarah gave a small smile. "He's doing better, isn't he?" "He is. And I don't know how to thank you for that." She shook her head. "You don't have to thank me. I'm happy for him." Henry stayed quiet, just watching her. "Have you ever thought about studying?" She looked at him, surprised. "Studying? College? Is there a field you're interested in?" Sarah gave a small, humorless smile. "That was always a distant dream. I barely finished high school. I had to drop everything to take care of my grandmother. And after she passed, surviving became the priority." Henry rested his elbows on the table. "What if I told you I could help?" Why? Because you're helping my son. You're giving him back something I thought was lost forever. Sarah stayed silent, letting those words sink in. Henry continued, you're not just someone passing through. You're changing our lives. And maybe it's time for you to live yours, too. The next morning, when she came down for breakfast, Sarah found an envelope on the table with her name written in elegant letters. Inside, there was a bank card, an ID badge with Henry's company logo, and a sheet with instructions, your work contract is active. Salary deposited on the first business day. All benefits included. She pressed the envelope against her chest. She had never had an ID badge with her name on it. She had never had a steady salary. She had never had security. And now, she did. Not because she tricked anyone, not because she begged, but because she was honest. That morning, Ethan ran up to her with a drawing in his hands. I made this for you. Sarah knelt down, carefully taking the paper. It was a house, a smiling sun, and 3 people holding hands. Who are they? She asked. Ethan pointed. Me. You. Dad. Sarah bit her lip, touched. It's beautiful. Ethan threw his arms around her and whispered, you're like magic. Sarah smiled, holding back tears. So are you, little one. Ethan let go, and as Sarah held the drawing so gently, he smiled, not the shy, hesitant smile from before, but a smile of pure joy. Moments later, he ran to the living room with his favorite toy car, shouting that he had an idea for a new game. Sarah followed, leaving the envelope with her name carefully on the table as if she didn't want that moment to end. But deep down, she knew something inside her had already started to change. That afternoon, the mansion felt different. For the first time in years, the sound of toys filled the hallways. Ethan dragged a box of colorful blocks, and Sarah followed behind carrying 2 cushions he called magic walls. This will be the secret entrance, Ethan explained, already on his knees on the rug. No one can pass without the password. And what's the password? He looked at her with a serious expression. A hug. Sarah opened her arms, and without hesitation, he ran to her laughing. They rolled on the rug surrounded by blocks and laughter as the afternoon sun cast a golden glow across the floor. Henry came home in the middle of the afternoon. He had only left for a quick meeting, but something inside him, maybe a new kind of restlessness, made him want to get home earlier than usual. As he walked in, he heard a burst of laughter from the living room. He smiled to himself, shaking his head in a mix of surprise and disbelief. As he got closer, he saw Ethan sitting on the rug covered by a blanket that formed a makeshift tent while Sarah read aloud from a book about dragons that roared in pretend. Henry leaned against the doorway and crossed his arms, just watching. Ethan looked light. The dark circles under his eyes from the past month seemed less noticeable. His posture was more relaxed, and there was something in his eyes that Henry hadn't seen since the last time Olivia hugged him, brightness. When the story ended, Sarah closed the book with a dramatic gesture, making Ethan clap and laugh. One more, he begged, already heading to the bookshelf. Just one more or we'll end up falling asleep right here, she replied with a knowing smile. That's when she noticed Henry. He didn't say anything, just gave her a discreet smile. Sarah nodded in return and turned her attention back to Ethan, who was now choosing a book about dragons that blew soap bubbles. Henry, however, stayed there for a few more minutes, as if trying to capture that moment in his memory. Later, Sarah went to her room. She was exhausted, not physically, but emotionally. The joy of the day combined with the quiet sense of safety she was starting to feel in that place was something completely new. She sat on the bed and opened the notebook she had been carrying ever since she left her grandmother's house. It had more blank pages than written ones, but that night, she felt like writing. Today, a little boy hugged me and told me I'm magical. Maybe he's right. Or maybe he just needs to believe that magic exists in the world. I need to believe it too. She carefully closed the notebook and placed it in the drawer. The night was peaceful, no noise, no fear. For the first time in a long while, Sarah slept deeply. The next morning, Sarah went down to the kitchen and found Mrs. Marta preparing breakfast with her usual calm and organized manner. But this time, there was a second plate on the table, scrambled eggs, fruit, and a glass of juice. "Is this for me?" The boy asked for it, Marta said with a small smile. "He said Sarah needs to eat like him because getting strong is important." Sarah chuckled quietly and sat down. A few moments later, Ethan walked into the kitchen and went straight to her, as if it had always been part of his routine. He sat next to her, grabbed a banana, and started talking about a dream he had about an astronaut giraffe. Henry appeared a few minutes later, already in his suit ready to leave. "Everything okay here?" he asked. Ethan answered with a big smile, "Sarah is going to help me build a rocket today." Henry raised an eyebrow, surprised. "A rocket?" "Yes. With boxes and aluminum foil." Sarah just shrugged as if saying, "You haven't seen anything yet." "Just let me know if you plan on taking off," Henry said, laughing. During breakfast, Henry stayed longer than usual. He watched how easily Ethan talked to Sarah, how comfortable he seemed, and how she truly listened to him with attention, without distractions, without rushing. Before leaving, Henry gently touched Sarah's shoulder. "I'd like to talk to you later if you're free. Meet me in the office this afternoon." She nodded, a bit surprised. He just smiled and walked out the front door. The morning was all about building the rocket. Sarah and Ethan used 2 large cardboard boxes, tape, colored paper, and the aluminum foil Mrs. Marta reluctantly gave them. In the end, the rocket had drawn-on windows, paper wings, and even a red ignition button. "This is better than any toy in the store," Sarah said, watching the boy spin inside the box as if he were in space. "And way more fun," Ethan replied. After a quick snack in the garden, Ethan got tired and asked to take a nap. Sarah took him to his room, read him a short story, and stayed until he fell asleep. Once he was asleep, she headed to the office. Henry was at his desk typing on his laptop when he saw her enter. He closed the screen and motioned to the chair across from him. "Thanks for coming." Sarah sat down, trying to hide her nervousness. "Is everything okay?" "Yes, actually more than okay." He leaned slightly forward, resting his arms on his knees. "I wanted to talk to you about something I've been thinking about since this morning." Sarah just listened, waiting. "I realize that ever since you arrived, my son hasn't just started smiling again, he's come back to life. Before, he was just getting through the days. Now, he looks forward to mornings, to spending time with you, to the next game. And that is priceless." She swallowed hard, unsure of what to say. "So I thought, maybe it would be fair for you to have something too. Something that's yours." Sarah frowned slightly. "What do you mean?" Henry opened a folder on the desk and slid it toward her. "This is a technical course program with both in-person and online classes, educational psychology. It's directly related to what you're already doing. And if you're interested, I'll cover all the costs, materials, transportation, everything." Sarah's eyes widened in surprise. "Henry, this is a lot." "It's not. It's the least I can do. You have talent. You have empathy. You have a gift. And more than that, you have the heart that many professionals out there are missing." She hesitated. "But what if I can't do it?" "You already have. Look at Ethan. And look at yourself." Sarah lowered her eyes, trying to hold back her emotions. "No one has ever believed in me like this before. Then it's time for you to start believing too." That night, after Ethan fell asleep, Sarah stepped outside into the garden and sat on the wooden bench beneath the oldest tree on the property. The breeze was gentle, and the sky was clear. The stars shone brightly. Henry appeared a little later, carrying 2 mugs of tea. He handed one to her and sat down beside her. "I want you to know something," he said. "What?" "I'm not in a hurry. But I'm not giving up on you." Sarah looked at him, her eyes filled with emotion. "I know." The sky was clear, and the sun peeked shyly through the clouds as if it knew this day deserved a special light. Ethan, excited since the night before, bounced around while Sarah packed a bag with fruit, water, and a picnic blanket. "Dad, are you ready?" he shouted from the hallway. "Almost," Henry called back, trying to finish putting on his sneakers. "Just give me 2 more seconds, astronaut." Sarah smiled as she listened to them talking like they were on a space mission. Seeing Henry so light-hearted was something new and wonderful. He looked younger, more at ease, more alive. A short while later, they left together. Henry drove with one arm resting on the window, Ethan in the back seat making up a song, and Sarah in the front watching the city go by as if she were seeing it for the first time. They arrived at the park early. There weren't many people around, a few kids played on the swings, and couples strolled quietly along tree-lined paths. Ethan took off running as soon as he saw the playground. "He didn't even wait for us to get out of the car," Sarah said, laughing. "That's a good sign." Henry opened the door and glanced at her. "It means he trusts that we'll be there when he looks back." She nodded in silent agreement. They spread out the blanket under a big tree with a view of the slide. Sarah took off her shoes and sat cross-legged while Henry leaned against the trunk, watching her from a distance. "Have you ever thought about having kids?" he asked suddenly. Sarah looked at him, surprised. "I have. But I never thought it could actually happen. Not with the life I used to have. And now?" She smiled softly. "Now I feel like anything is possible." Henry lowered his eyes for a moment, then looked back at her. "You're amazing, Sarah." She looked away, unsure how to respond. She was still getting used to how directly Henry saw her, not as someone who needed saving, but as someone who mattered. A few minutes later, Ethan ran back, his face flushed, breathing hard. "Sarah, come with me on the slide." "Oh no, now?" she asked, pretending to be exhausted. "Now," he laughed, got up, and ran with him to the playground, climbing the steps as if she were scared. Ethan slid down first, cheering. Sarah followed, laughing loudly. Henry watched from a distance, arms crossed, unable to hide his smile. That image of the two of them playing, having fun, was exactly what he never knew he needed to see. After the slide, they went on the seesaws, the merry-go-round, and finally, Ethan's most anticipated moment, the picnic. They sat under the tree, sharing sandwiches, apple slices, and cookies. "This is the best day of my life," Ethan declared with his mouth full. Sarah laughed. "Even better than the day you got your toy rocket?" "Way better." Henry looked at Sarah and joked, "You outdid my gift." "Congrats." "It's the sandwich's fault," she replied, holding up her sandwich like a trophy. Their laughter blended with the gentle sound of the wind rustling through the leaves. Lay down on the blanket and fell asleep with his head resting on Sarah's lap. She ran her fingers gently through his hair while Henry sat closer, watching in silence. "I feel different when I'm with you," he said softly. Sarah looked up at him. "What do you mean?" "I remember who I was before the pain." She didn't respond. She just placed her hand over his in a steady, calm gesture. "You're still that man, Henry. You just forgot." He turned his hand to fully hold hers, and they stayed like that, with Ethan sleeping between them, as if that moment was meant to last forever. The morning after their day in the park, Sarah woke up to the soft sound of rain tapping against the window. The house was quiet, but her heart felt restless. She could still feel the warmth of the day before, the laughter, the gentle touch of Henry's hand over hers, Ethan sleeping peacefully between them. She walked downstairs slowly, her bare feet touching the cold floor, and found Henry in the kitchen making coffee. His back was to her, his white shirt slightly wrinkled, his hair a little messy. The scene was simple yet full of meaning. "Good morning," she said softly. He turned around with a smile. "Good morning, Sarah." She stepped closer, reaching for a clean cup from the cabinet. "Did you sleep well?" "Better than I have in years," he said, pouring coffee for her. "And you?" "I still feel like I'm floating." "Because of the park. Because of everything. Because of what we're building." Henry moved a little closer, his eyes locked on hers. "I thought a lot last night." Sarah tightened her grip on the cup handle. "About what?" "About what I want moving forward. About you. About Ethan." And I reel the years past in a beautiful rhythm within the Mitchell household. Helena grew into a bright-eyed toddler who followed her big brother everywhere, much to Ethan's delight. What had begun as a chance encounter on a city street had blossomed into a life Sarah could never have imagined during her darkest days. Each morning, the family gathered around the kitchen table, Henry reading the newspaper with one hand while steadying Helena's cereal bowl with the other, Ethan excitedly recounting his latest school project, and Sarah moving between them with steaming mugs of coffee and plates of toast. The simple domesticity of these moments filled Sarah with quiet joy. One crisp autumn afternoon, Sarah stood in the backyard watching Ethan teach his little sister how to kick a soccer ball. Henry came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist and resting his chin on her shoulder. "Remember when this was just an empty garden?" he murmured. Sarah leaned back into his embrace. "Now it's full of life. Just like the rest of the house." Henry turned her to face him, his eyes serious. "I was thinking, what would you say to starting a foundation? For homeless women looking for work?" Sarah's breath caught. "You mean? A way to pay forward what brought us together? We could provide housing, job training, counseling. You'd be perfect to lead it, you understand what they're going through better than anyone." Tears pricked at Sarah's eyes as the full meaning of his words sank in. Not just charity, but empowerment. Not just helping, but truly seeing people as she had been seen. That's exactly what I would have needed," she managed to say. Henry brushed a tear from her cheek with his thumb. "Then let's build it together." The Mitchell Family Foundation opened its doors the following spring in a renovated building just blocks from where Sarah had found Henry's wallet all those years ago. On opening day, Sarah stood before the small crowd of supporters and future residents, Helena balanced on her hip, Ethan standing proudly at her side, Henry's hand warm at the small of her back. "I was once where you are," she told the women gathered before her. "Alone. Hungry. Certain that no one saw me. But sometimes help comes from unexpected places. Sometimes hope wears a face you don't recognize at first. This foundation isn't just about giving you a bed or a meal, it's about helping you remember your own strength, just as someone once helped me remember mine." As the crowd applauded, Henry squeezed her hand. In that moment, Sarah realized her journey had come full circle, from desperation to security, from invisibility to purpose, from surviving to truly living. That night, as she tucked Ethan and Helena into bed, her son looked up at her with solemn eyes. "Mom. I'm glad you found Dad's wallet." Sarah smoothed his hair back from his forehead. "Me too, sweetheart. Me too." Downstairs, Henry waited with 2 glasses of wine by the fireplace. Sarah settled beside him, resting her head against his shoulder as they watched the years continue to weave their gentle magic through the Mitchell household. The foundation Sarah and Henry created flourished, helping hundreds of women regain their footing in life. What began as a single facility expanded to 3 locations across the city, each bearing the same welcoming atmosphere Sarah had found in Henry's home all those years ago. One particularly busy Wednesday afternoon found Sarah in her office at the foundation, reviewing applications when her phone buzzed. Henry's name flashed on the screen with the message, "Emergency family meeting at the big oak tree. 5 p.m., bring cookies." She smiled at the last part, their secret. The warm afternoon sun streamed through the windows of the Mitchell home as Sarah stood at the kitchen counter, carefully arranging flowers in a vase. The scent of freshly baked bread filled the air, mixing with the sounds of children's laughter drifting in from the backyard. Henry walked up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist and resting his chin on her shoulder. "Remember when this kitchen felt like a museum?" he murmured, pressing a kiss to her temple. She leaned back into his embrace with a contented sigh. "Now it's my favorite room in the house. Flour on the counters, juice boxes in the fridge, crayon drawings on the walls." The back door burst open as 7-year-old Helena came running in, her braids bouncing. "Mom! Dad! Ethan taught me how to do a cartwheel." Right behind her, 12-year-old Ethan rolled his eyes but couldn't hide his proud smile. "She only fell 3 times. Henry ruffled his son's hair. "Why don't you two go wash up? Dinner's almost ready." As the children ran off, Sarah turned in Henry's arms to face him. "10 years," she said softly, tracing the lines of his face that had become so familiar. "Can you believe it?" He caught her hand and pressed it to his lips. "Every morning I wake up grateful that you walked up to my gate that day." The moment was interrupted by a loud crash from upstairs, followed by giggles. Sarah sighed. "We should probably go check on that." Henry grinned. "Race you there?" Later that evening, after the children were tucked in bed, they sat together on the porch swing, listening to the crickets chirp in the warm night air. Sarah rested her head on Henry's shoulder as he gently rocked them back and forth. "Did I ever tell you," he said quietly, "that when I first saw you standing at my gate, I thought you were an angel?" She laughed softly. "A very dirty, hungry angel with holes in her shoes. The most beautiful thing I'd ever seen." His voice was thick with emotion. "You saved us, you know. Me and Ethan both." Sarah lifted her head to meet his gaze. "We saved each other." Inside the house, the baby monitor crackled to life with Jacob's sleepy murmur. Sarah made to stand, but Henry stopped her. "I'll go." As she watched him disappear inside, Sarah's eyes drifted to the framed photo on the porch wall, a simple snapshot of her and Henry on their wedding day, with Ethan between them, all three beaming with joy. The screen door creaked as Henry returned, carefully balancing a sleeping 2-year-old against his shoulder. Someone wanted to say goodnight to his mommy. Sarah reached up to smooth Jacob's dark curls as he slept peacefully against his father's chest. In that moment, surrounded by the people she loved most, Sarah realized something profound: home wasn't a place. It wasn't the grand mansion or the fancy furniture. Home was this. The weight of a sleeping child in strong arms. The sound of teenagers whispering past bedtime. The warmth of a hand to hold in the darkness. The certainty that no matter what storms came, they would weather them together. Henry's free hand found hers as they rocked gently in the moonlight, two souls who had been lost until they found each other, now bound together in this perfect, ordinary, extraordinary love. And somewhere out in the night, a streetlight flickered over an empty sidewalk where a worn-out pair of sneakers had once paused, and changed everything.